John Milton, Character of Satan. Milton is chiefly known for his monumental work, The Paradise Lost. And Paradise Lost is essentially remembered due to the character of Satan. Satan's character is highly complex. That is why it has been appreciated differently by different critics ranging from one extreme to another. There are critics who consider Satan to be the hero of the poem while others proclaim that he is the villain. The two extreme and diametrically opposed views actually come from two different schools of thoughts. That is what makes Satan's character contentious and controversial. The Romantic school of thought, due to its espousal with the doctrines of self-will, defiance of authority, undaunted courage, love of freedom, impatience with restraints, challenge to tyrants, adventurousness, sense of aestheticism and revelation of one's own self, perceives Satan as the hero of the epic. And there is no denying the fact, as it emerges from our readings of the poem, that Milton has portrayed Satan, at least in the first 4 books, as the most sublime character in the poem. The first romantic quality that strikes us in Satan is his unbending courage. Even after his defeat at the hands of God and his fall from heaven, the idea of submitting himself to his enemy and accepting his defeat is repugnant to him. He is prepared at no cost and no temptation to accept slavery, better rule in hell than serve in paradise. His leader-like qualities are just matchless. He can inspire his companions to wage yet another war against the Almighty. He is so adventurous that he sets the example first before asking his men to follow him. As a great orator, he can spellbound the audience. This could only be achieved by knowing the psychology of the mob, the characteristic of a good leader. Satan is against all forms of tyranny. He therefore challenges that God himself refuses to acknowledge his supremacy. His strength of mind is as great as his physical strength. He is a great tragic figure, even greater than the Shakespearean heroes. That is why his power of action is as great as his power of suffering. Satan is not without softer sides to his character. He feels for the fall that he has brought about not merely upon himself but his followers also. In several places he blurts out tut speeches that indicate his pity and his fellow feelings for his suffering fellows. Satan is grand and noble enough to appreciate the beauty, the nobility, the simplicity, and the innocence of Adam and Eve. These impressions that a reader takes may consider Satan as the hero of the great epic. But the classical school of thought, due to its adherence with the principles of virtue, morality, and authority, does not consider Satan as the hero of the epic. According to this view, Satan is the villain because of his challenge to God Almighty, tempting of Adam and Eve, creating pitfalls for man in this world, and resolving to transform every virtue to vice. Obviously, those heroic qualities of Satan were not acceptable to the believers of moralistic principles in the classical school of thought. To them, Satan is an evil incarnate and that he exists only for the sake of sinfulness. Thus the critics and poets of the Romantic school greatly admired Milton's portrayal of Satan, while those of classical school took him as a villain of the poem. Yet another view is that the character of Satan shows a gradual decline. According to Lewis, the transformation of Satan, as the poem moves on, is quite significant. It starts from hero to general, from general to politician, from politician to secret service agent, and thence to a thing that peeps in the bedroom or bathroom windows, and thence to a toad, and finally to a snake. Such is the progress of Satan. This view does not agree that Milton made Satan more glorious than actually he deserved. Several causes, both conscious and unconscious in the part of the poet, must have contributed to the apparent greatness of Satan's character. In the first, it is to keep in mind that Satan is the adversary of the Almighty. It would be ridiculous to represent the opponent of God as weak, puny, and negligible character. Secondly, Satan, once chief among the archangels who stood nearest to God, could not be shown an insignificant character in the epic. Thirdly, Milton, himself a rebel at heart against all kinds of tyranny, unconsciously gave his sympathy to the first great arch-rebel. However, as the poem moves on, in the later books, there is distinct falling off from the loftiness of the conception that we notice in the earlier parts of the poem. Thus in the earlier books, the epic Satan is still the fallen, unchanged. Something of the greatness and the sublimity of an unchanged must continue to be seen in him even after he has fallen. But this only for the time being. The consequences of the fall are bound to make themselves fall in the long run. In other words, the Satan of the first 4 books is still an unchanged, though fallen, and worthy of his great part. Corruption and sin gradually take hold of him, and the result is seen in the gradual deterioration of his character in the subsequent books. This seems to be a plausible explanation, though we have very much to doubt whether Milton consciously intended such a transformation. However, the fact remains that we observe in Satan an imposing and powerful personality, not without several good and noble points, and in some places absolutely heroic in conception.